Welcome to this explainer. Have you ever delivered exactly what was asked for, only to be told it's entirely wrong? Yeah, it's the absolute worst. Today, we're going to unpack one of the most hidden yet incredibly expensive traps in project development. We are going to master the art of requirements elicitation, and we're starting with a story that, well, it might hit a little too close to home for some of you. So picture this. On the left, we've got Maria, a human resources specialist. On the right is Phil, the lead developer, who just rolled out a shiny, brand new personnel system for Maria's department. Maria calls Phil in an absolute panic. An employee named Sparkles Starlight just legally changed her name, but when Maria tries to put this into the new system, it outright rejects it. Phil is completely confused. He asks, wait, did she get married? Maria says, no, she just changed her name. And right then, it hits Phil. The system he built only allows a name change if a person's marital status changes. Which brings us to a really famous quote in this exact scenario. When Phil says he had no idea someone could just change their name out of the blue, Maria drops this line, "I assumed you knew that people could legally change their name anytime they like." She didn't document it, she didn't specify it, she simply assumed it was a universal truth that Phil would inherently understand and build into the software. This is what we call implied functionality. And actually, let's just call it what it is, a silent project killer. Now, it's wild how fast things escalate from a simple oversight into a full-blown crisis. Phil gets defensive, right? He tells Maria it's not his fault and that she should have told him this in the first place because he can't read her mind. His grand solution? Next time, tell me these things earlier and please write them down. Meanwhile, Maria is completely freaking out because she has a hard deadline. If this isn't straightened out by Friday, Sparkle Starlight won't be able to cash her paycheck. Phil just shrugs and says it's not a bug, it's a new feature request, and he can't even get to it until the end of the month. Yikes. So what exactly went wrong with the Sparkle Starlight system? Take a second and think critically about this. Was Phil a terrible developer? Was Maria bad at HR? Not necessarily. What really failed here was their informal information gathering. They relied on casual conversations, poorly specified requirements, and most dangerously, completely miscommunicated assumptions. Maria had business knowledge she just assumed Phil possessed, and Phil built a rigid system without probing for any edge cases. And look, let's zoom out because this isn't just a funny, isolated anecdote. When researchers studied a massive sample of failed projects, a staggering 47% of them cited incomplete requirements or lack of user input as the primary cause of project failure. Nearly half. That means almost half of all failed projects die because of the exact same trap Maria and Phil fell into. If that doesn't make you sit up straight, check out this number from the Project Management Institute. PMI estimates that a whopping 50% of the effort spent on a project is avoidable rework. Think about that for a second. Half of the time, money, and energy your entire team spends is literally just redoing things that were done wrong the first time. And the main reason for all this rework? Unclear, changing, or incorrect requirements. Here is the absolute kicker and a crucial takeaway. The cost of fixing errors increases exponentially as the project progresses. If Phil and Maria had uncovered this name change requirement during their initial planning phase, it would have cost practically nothing to fix, just a few words added to a document. But because they're discovering this error after the system is built, programmed, and deployed, fixing it now requires recoding, retesting, and potential delays to payroll. The cost has absolutely skyrocketed. So to stop this from happening, we have to redefine what a requirement actually is in business analysis. A standard dictionary will tell you it's a necessity, but that is nowhere near good enough for us. A solid requirement is highly specific. It is a specification of what should be implemented. It explicitly describes system behavior, a property, an attribute, or even a constraint on how the system is developed. Think of it as an active blueprint, not just a casual wish list. Broadly speaking, we can toss the requirements gathering process into two distinct buckets. On one side, we have requirements management. This is the stuff happening throughout the project lifecycle. It's about setting baselines, evaluating the impact of changes, and making sure those changes don't completely derail your project plan. On the other side is requirements development. This is the initial exploration, evaluation, documentation, and confirmation of what the customer actually needs. Requirements development itself is a structured journey broken down into 4 clear phases. Step 1 is elicitation, basically discovering the needs. Step 2 is analysis, where we categorize, prioritize, and hunt down those hidden gaps. Step 3 is documentation, translating those needs into diagrams and specs for the developers. And finally, step 4 is sign-off, where the business formally agrees, yes, this is exactly what we want, before a single line of code is ever written. Which brings us to the next section, the heart of development, elicitation. Let's get right into it. I really need to bust a massive myth right now. Elicitation is not just writing down what the user says. Remember our lead developer, Phil? His parting advice to Maria was, next time tell me these things earlier and please write them down. Phil thinks elicitation is dictation. He assumes a business analyst is just a stenographer typing out whatever the user dictates. But as we just saw, users don't know what to dictate because they literally don't realize what their own hidden assumptions are. To add to that, elicitation is also not just gathering documents. You can't just stroll into a department, ask for their current forms, shove them into a manila folder, and call it a day. That is passive gathering, and it's not going to uncover the real issues. Instead, you've got to view elicitation as the most challenging, the most critical, the most error-prone, and the most communication-intensive activity in the entire process. It's not passive at all. It is an active, rigorous excavation. You have to grab a shovel and actively dig to find those hidden sparkle starlight scenarios that no one bothers to mention because they assume you already know them. So, moving on to the next part, planning elicitation success. Here's how we actually pull this off. First rule, you absolutely cannot just wing an elicitation session. You need a rock-solid plan. This means locking in clear objectives and a strategy for how you're going to extract the information. You must have a defined schedule and dedicated resources. Crucially, your stakeholders must be given dedicated time to participate. If you don't fiercely protect their time, they'll just get sucked back into their daily work and you'll end up with rushed, half-baked assumptions. You also need to plan for system access, what the outputs will look like, and identify potential risks right up front. Once that overarching plan is locked in, the actual elicitation workflow comes down to 3 concrete steps. 1. Prepare. You decide on the scope of the session, create an agenda, and whip up some visual mockups to prompt your users. 2. Perform. You actively interact during the session and take incredibly organized notes. And 3. Follow up. You immediately document any open items and share your notes to make sure everyone is on exactly the same page. When it comes to that perform step, you have a couple of different tools in your toolkit. We can broadly split these into facilitated techniques versus independent techniques. Independent ones are things the business analyst does totally solo without bothering the stakeholders, like analyzing an existing system. Facilitated techniques, on the other hand, require you to roll up your sleeves and directly interact with stakeholders to pull out those hidden needs. One of the absolute best facilitated techniques is the interview. Interviews are a total game changer because they create a much safer space than a big, intimidating workshop. Done one-on-one or in very small groups, they give a skilled analyst the chance to ask those probing what-if questions without the stakeholder feeling foolish in front of a crowd. They are also perfect for busy executives. An interview is exactly where a good analyst would have stopped Maria and said, okay, walk me through literally every possible reason a personnel record might need to be altered. Which brings us right back to our starting point, leaving us with this vital question. If Phil and Maria had rigorously planned their elicitation, used proper techniques like structured interviews, and actively challenged their assumptions, would Sparkle Starlight have gotten paid on Friday? Yeah, for sure. The true cost of just writing it down is broken systems, panicked Fridays, and exponential rework costs. So, the next time you kick off a project, ask yourself, what unspoken assumptions are hiding in your stakeholder's mind, just waiting to crash your system? Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer. I really hope this helps you build smarter, better, and with way fewer surprises down the line.